Welcome back to the show where we run you through all the Dolphins news you need to know about. After we run you through the news you need to know about, we run you through the fan Q&A where we answer fans' questions. This show comes out each and every single Monday/Sunday. So if you like that, hopefully you check out the channel. This first news story, and amongst not very many news stories, there's not a lot to talk about. It's probably going to be a very short episode, unless the fan Q&A brings us to a longer episode. We'll have to see. But this first news story comes from Pro Football Rumors. The Dolphins have signed their rookie running back, Malcolm Perry. This comes from Pro Football Rumors, by the way, in case I didn't say it. The Dolphins have signed 7th-round pick Malcolm Perry, as Field Yates of ESPN.com tweets. The fleet-footed quarterback out of Navy is expected to play running back as a pro. Last year, Perry racked up 2,000 yards for the midshipman, who ran a variation of triple options. He was listed as a quarterback, but Perry only threw for 1,000 yards in 2019 while spinning a good chunk of snaps in the A-back position. In essence, that means he's lining up as a running back. Perry's versatility should come in handy for the Dolphins, though they'll have to carve out practice reps as a receiver. The feeling is that Perry's athleticism will lend itself well to wide receiver assignments, but he had just 22 catches in college and 0 receptions last year. The Dolphins have now inked the majority of their draft class. The ones that they have signed are Tua Tagovailoa, Raekwon Davis, Brandon Jones, Solomon Kinley, Jason Strowbridge, Curtis Weaver, Blake Ferguson, and Malcolm Perry. The only ones that have not been signed are Austin Jackson, Noah Igbenogany, Robert Hunt, excuse me. And that's it. It's only 3. We only need to get Austin Jackson signed, Igbenogany signed, and Robert Hunt signed. So, talking about Malcolm Perry, obviously we just listed off the stats. He didn't catch balls in college. He didn't even have a catch last year. Obviously, he was pretty much a running back in that offense, even though he did throw the ball a little bit, hence the 1,000 yards. I think we've got a lot of questions in the fan Q&A since we drafted him. Where he'll play, where I think he'll play. I couldn't see him, people compare, like, maybe he could be a Wes Welker type. Wes Welker was never not a receiver at Texas Tech. It's going to be very hard to develop him in that mold. I mean, Julian Edelman was a quarterback at, Kent State or something like that? So it can be done, but it takes time. Even Julian Edelman took years to develop into a really good slot receiver. I mean, years. People forget Edelman was on that team for a long time. So, if you do go down that road, it'll probably take a long time. I wouldn't expect him to, especially if we're training him as a slot receiver, to do it right away. I wish the Dolphins would use him like Taysom Hill. He's not as big as Taysom Hill. He's not as physical as Taysom Hill. So you're not going to put him in there like as a lead blocker or some creative stuff like that, or as a tight end and stuff of that nature. But you can use him in a variety of different ways. He's such an athlete. He's such a great athlete that you just want to get him in the ball in open space. So I feel like you just got to be as creative as you want to. Throw him screens. Put him in there as a triple option guy. Do whatever you can. This guy can go from 0 to 100 in no time. He's one of the most explosive players I've seen in a long time. I mean, he is a very explosive athlete that you just want to find ways to get him the ball. Not everybody has to have a position. We can't pigeonhole certain players. I think you just have to use him like he was used in college, just as an athlete who's a great football player who you just need to get the football to. I mean, he showed that in the East-West Shrine game. His best moments where he was used like Taysom Hill, where he is used like he was in college, but obviously at a greater extent. You don't want to. Obviously, he's not going to be the triple option guy. You want him to do different things with him, but he just needs to play football. I feel like that's his best spot. He's like Cordell Stewart or Taysom Hill or some of those players in the past that, like an old school player. Just get him the ball in space. Find ways to get him involved in the game plan, and good things will happen. He doesn't have to play a position. He could play running back. He's a great open field runner. He could do that, but I would rather just use him in a variety of different ways because I want his snaps to be more than him being like the third string running back, because that's really would be. I mean, Matt Breida and Jordan Howard are better running backs than him, so he wouldn't see the field that often. I just don't think they should pigeonhole him as a running back or as a slot receiver. You can still train him as a slot receiver, but still, utilize him in that way and regular season games. And in practice, you can, cross-train him as whatever you want to do, really. But I feel like he needs to see the field. I hope that he's as good as I think he is. And I just hope they use him in creative ways, is basically what I hope for Malcolm Perry. Because he is a very explosive player. Very explosive. We might have seen him on special teams. If he can catch a punt and a kick, I wouldn't doubt that. He's a very explosive player. That was really it for the major news, ladies and gentlemen. Now we get into some speculative stuff. This next news story comes from the Finsider. Excuse me, guys. And the question is asked, what can we expect from Curtis Weaver? The Dolphins selected Curtis Weaver in the 5th round, which surprised a few people because he was considered one of the most productive pass rushers in this year's draft. The article from Sports Illustrated takes a historic look on what we could expect from the young player from Boise State. Maybe he becomes a disruptive pass rusher like Cameron Wick, or maybe he is just Charles Harris 2.0. Okay, so I wanted to read this because Curtis Weaver, other than if we can't count Tua, because obviously Tua would be my favorite draft pick, but Curtis Weaver is probably my second favorite because I just love his game. I love the way he plays. His production in college is out of this world. He clearly has more pass rush moves and is way more of a versatile player than Charles Harris was coming out. He's more physical. He's better against the run. He's obviously stronger. He's a stronger player, plays stronger. And he's a really good pass rusher. And I think all of that is going to translate. I think, one of the reasons he dropped was because, he looks a little pudgy. He's not shredded out of his mind. He looks kind of like a Jarrell Casey, that kind of a body type that plays outside linebacker. And when you look at his production at Boise State and the way he plays and how good he is, I think he dropped a little too far for that, especially since he's, this in today's day and age, you need pass rushers, depending on what defense you play. So I think we got a steal in Curtis Weaver. We're definitely not getting Charles Harris 2.0. They're completely different players. And like I said when we drafted him, he's a better prospect than Charles Harris was coming out of college. It's not even close. I don't think you could make an argument. I think if you're looking at Charles Harris and Curtis Weaver in college, who's the better player, it's not even close. So I really like Curtis Weaver. I think he, in my opinion, will be disruptive right out of the gate. To answer the Finsider's question over there, it's a great article if you guys want to go read the rest of that. But it brings up a good question. So we have another couple, again, more speculative stuff here. This is actually a real news story. This comes from the Finsider. Many Dolphins players could return sooner than expected. Earlier today, the league sent out a lengthy memo to all 32 teams regarding the guidelines for the upcoming 2020 NFL season. We all know the world has been decimated by COVID-19, and with many hopeful for a return to normalcy, teams have to comply with a laundry list of guidelines and regulations. Here's a summary of some of their key takeaways. Teams to classify staff in tiers to limit access to players/coaches. Virtual meetings encouraged. In-person meetings with masks/distancing. Locker rooms must be reconfigured for distancing. Lifting and conditioning. Work limited to groups of 15. Although there is no date set for the players can officially return to the team facilities, NFL Network's Tom Pelissero believes many Dolphins players could return sooner than later. This is a quote from Tom Pelissero. He says, quote, "No date set yet and no minicamps expected, but the NFL and NFLPA are discussing the possibility of certain players, such as rookies and veterans, who change teams and need physicals, returning to club facilities on a limited basis before June 26th. The Dolphins spent a ton of money this offseason on some of the league's top free agents. Unfortunately, most of those veterans have been unable to meet with their new teams or team. The same holds true for rookies who are eager to report and acclimate to their new coaches." So, an interesting report, a little bit of insight on where the state of the league is, where the state of the Dolphins are, And I do agree that I feel like the rookies, and especially if you need a physical, that's a completely different argument. But because that should be priority in my opinion. And I think where we are right now, I think it's totally fine if you get a few people in a room, or you can just like 2 people in a room to do a physical. So, I think that, them saying certain things hold more priority than others, I think is the smart way to think about this thing. And I hope that, I don't think we're going to get a rookie camp or anything like that, which is kind of rough, and hopefully doesn't slow some of the players down. And not to mention, we have a new offense we're trying to install. And I know we could do that over virtual meetings, but running it on a practice field and actually being able to practice with your teammates for a long period of time, it obviously makes a huge difference. Hopefully it doesn't hit them that hard. We could see like a mid-season renaissance in terms of the offense is really starting to click. Hopefully we don't have to hit that wall, though. I would rather, preseason plus training camp, depending on how much of that we get. Hopefully it gets us to that point. But, the article made a great point that not only does this team have a lot of new faces, thank God on defense, most of them already know the playbook. But on offense, not only are there new faces, because you have Jordan Howard and Matt Breida coming in, but there's a new offense to be ran and to be installed and to get acclimated to and to run new plays and stuff of that nature. So, it's going to be tough, but hopefully we get football and players. I know that coaches have already been allowed in the facilities, but hopefully that starts to kind of pick up a little bit here in the next 4 weeks, where we see rookies come in, because those guys, I feel like rookies do hold priority. There's less rookies than obviously an entire NFL roster, especially even if you do combine undrafted rookies with normal rookies. I feel like you could probably do that, even if you rotate them in and out on certain days. Maybe we have this group of guys come in on this day, this group of guys come in on this day, whatever the case may be. I think we're all eager to see that happen, and it would be good, obviously very beneficial to the team for all the reasons I just laid out: new playbook, new faces, and rookies. It would obviously be very beneficial. So it's good to hear that they're very optimistic about the players returning sooner rather than later. So I thought it was a good news story to bring up. This last news story this comes from the Finsider. Competition should push Jerome Baker to be his best for the Miami Dolphins. The 2018 draft class has provided the Miami Dolphins with a number of key contributors, and linebacker Jerome Baker certainly stepped up to the plate during the 2019 season. Baker kicker, Jason Sanders, and tight end Mike Gesicki are all expected to remain starters for the Dolphins this upcoming season. But it's the linebacker that should be pushed to play his best. The 2019 season saw Jerome Baker register an impressive 126 tackles, 76 solo tackles, 3 for loss, along with 1.5 sacks, 1 interception, 4 pass defense, and 2 forced fumbles. So I wanted to talk about this. This is currently, these are the newcomers to the linebacker room, are Landon Roberts, Kyle Van Noy, and Curtis Weaver. Now, Curtis Weaver, I feel like we have to take out of this because he doesn't play the same position Jerome Baker does. Jerome Baker is the Mike linebacker of this defense, basically. He rarely lines up outside. He's always the Mike linebacker. So he plays a completely different position that Curtis Weaver is going to play. So that they're not even really fighting for the same thing. Kyle Van Noy is going to line up everywhere. He's more of a utility guy. I don't think he's going to play one position. And Landon Roberts he adds great depth. He's a great cover guy, and he's a great special teams player. But he's not better than Jerome Baker. I think Jerome Baker is such a versatile player that is one of the best players on the team right now, and one of the best defensive players that we have. So I know this article is like it'll push him. I don't think Jerome has anything to worry about. He's such a good player. I think Raekwon, more than anybody, I'm more worried about, and I'm interested to see if they switch his position. Even though we do have Kyle Van Noy coming in, I would like to see Raekwon McMillan an outside linebacker, but on some of those early downs, and especially if you know the other team's going to run it. Yeah, but I don't think Jerome Baker has anything to worry about. He's not talked about a lot. I don't know why. I feel like Dolphins fans don't give him enough credit. He's a great, and I mean this. He's definitely going to be a Pro Bowler. I could tell you that right now. He's that talented. He's a very good player. I love watching him play, and especially in today's game, he's the perfect linebacker. He will be the linebacker for this team for many years to come. There's no doubt in my mind. His rookie year was great. For a rookie, I mean, he was. I mean, we were all expecting Raekwon to come in, and because he had such a good off season his first year before he tore his ACL in preseason, all the focus kind of went to Raekwon. But when Jerome Baker started playing, I'm like, dude, Jerome is a really good player. I mean, you think about some of the great plays that he's made as a Dolphin already. I mean, he basically won us that Jets game as rookie. He did win us that Jets game. Remember with the pick six on Sam Darnold, which was awesome. He won us that. He helped us. He was a huge reason why we won against the Colts. Had an outstanding game that game. If he doesn't lose track of a ball, he would have had a sack, fumble, scoop, and score. And that sack obviously pushed him out of field goal range. So he is a great player who's versatile. We haven't had a linebacker like him with this kind of ability in probably a decade of Dolphins football. Like, if I had to pick a linebacker who can cover, who's good against the run, who's got great ball skills, I would pick Jerome Baker. I think out of pretty much everybody, unless there's somebody I'm forgetting. But I think I would. From last decade, we struggled with that for a long time, especially after 2012. It was really bad. We couldn't find anybody to cover tight ends. So, I think Jerome is underrated, and I don't think he's going to have to worry about his job being taken. Now, will the competition push him? Yeah. But there's no doubt in my mind that he will be the starting linebacker on this Dolphins defense, and a very, very good one. I think he's going into year 3, right? He's already shown so much improvement from year 1 to year 2. Now going into year 3, I'm super excited to see what he can do with a more talented defense around him. I think all Dolphins fans should be pretty hyped about him and his development. And like I said, he doesn't get talked about a lot. We talk about Preston Williams a lot. We talk about even Nick Needham. But Jerome Baker doesn't get his just desserts. Remember, this guy was a 3rd-round pick out of Ohio State, and he's played very well for this organization since he became a Dolphin. So I don't think he gets his just desserts, and I think we should be very excited for where he is going as a player in his development. So let's get to the fan Q&A, ladies and gentlemen. This is where, obviously, it's in the name. I don't know why I have to say this is where we answer fans' questions, but hey, we're about to answer some fans' questions in the fan Q&A. I know, guys. I mean, we're almost 20 minutes on news, which is pretty normal for this show, so maybe this show does go longer than I thought. But I could talk, so, it has a lot to do with it, too. So this first question from the fan Q&A comes from Sean Jacobson. He says, what has a bigger influence to win games? Assuming this is a great question. That I have to restart because I forgot. I had pre-read this question. And this question is a really good one, so let me start over. This question comes from Sean Jacobson. He says, what has a bigger influence to win games? Assuming you have 2 identical teams, better offensive line and mediocre defensive line, or better defensive line and mediocre offensive line? This is a great question because I feel like this is very subjective, and I think you're going to get 50,000 different answers from different people. But in my opinion, I think when you look at the history of the league, and especially from 2000 to 2010 to 2010 to 2020, and the evolution of the league, and you see who has the most regular season success, it's the great offensive teams. So if you want to build a consistent, really good regular season team, the offensive line is more important because it doesn't limit you. You can match up with pretty much every team in the league with a really good offensive line. When you go into other games, you don't worry. It's like, okay, we don't really have a bad matchup at that point. And I'm assuming this offensive line is good at both off running and pass pro and run blocking. At that point, I feel like you really don't have a bad matchup on offense. Now, we don't know what the skill positions. I don't know if he said, okay. Yeah, even I think Aaron Rodgers was asked the same question. Would you rather have like a A+ line or a C- receivers? He picked a line. I think for consistency, you have to have a great offensive line to win like 11 games a year. So I'm gonna go with the offensive line. I think it gives you more a better opportunity to consistently win your matchups. You're never really in a bad matchup at that point. You're a balanced offense. You really shouldn't ever be dominated on offense. Like, you're not going to go up to Buffalo or New York and get dominated up front. So it always gives you a chance to win. It's like having a great quarterback. You're always going to have a chance to win no matter who you play, and there's never a really bad matchup for you. So I'm going to go with the offensive line. You have to score points to win games, and I think to consistently win on a week in and week out basis, you have to have, because a lot of teams protect their offensive line, and it influences play calling heavily. So not only does it open up the playbook, you can do whatever the heck you want. It just does a lot for your coaches and your players. So I'm going to go with the offensive line. Now, having a great defensive line, I think you have to have that to win championships, at least a good one. You have to be able to obviously get after some of the great quarterbacks in this league. But first things first, you have to protect your great quarterback, or you're really not going to do a lot. You look at some of the guys that have won 10-plus games a year. You think about Aaron Rodgers, who's had some of the best pass-blocking offensive lines. The Steelers' offensive line has been great. They're winning 10. Now, earlier in Ben's career, they weren't that great. But in the 2010s to 2019 or whatever, that offensive line was very versatile and very good. You think about what the Colts were able to do when they got the big blue wall. The Cowboys, how they were able to dominate in Dak's rookie season and really should have had a Super Bowl run with Tony Romo, I think, a year or two before Dak got there. So, yeah, if you look at the Colts of the early, from 2000 to 2010, they had great offensive lines, especially pass-blocking offensive lines. Tom Brady with Dante Scarnecchia and some of those offensive lines they were able to put together. You think about it, he's had Logan Mankins, Shaq Mason, David Andrews. I'm forgetting some other really good offensive linemen that Tom has had, and really just good coaching on that offensive line. And he's had some good to mediocre some years, and you can really see the offense struggle because of that. But for the most part, all of those great guys have had great. I mean, even Patrick Mahomes in Kansas City. I mean, he has Eric Fisher and a really good offensive line for what they want to do. So you have to have a great offensive line to win consistently in this league. I think we've seen it as Dolphins fans. We've had better defensive lines than offensive lines, and you really see where it gets us, like 8-8. So you really have to have a great offensive line for me to be a great regular season team. Now, if you're trying to go over the hump, obviously you have to, I feel like, either have one of the best offenses in league's history, or you have to have more of a complete team. But that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about what wins you more games, and I feel like it's the offensive line. Would have more of an effect on the game than the defensive line would, in my opinion. There's so many examples of that I don't want to get into because I could sit here for 10 more minutes. I bring up other teams that had great defensive lines, but their offense couldn't do anything. I mean, if you think about the Buccaneers in years past, that's not the greatest example because they were still getting to the playoffs, but they couldn't get over the hump. But I feel like you have to have a really good offensive unit to win 10-plus games a year for like 10 years. Like, I feel like that has to be the foundation for your team. So yeah, to answer Sean Jacobson's question, what has a bigger influence to win games, assuming you have two identical teams, better offensive line and mediocre defensive line, or better defensive line and mediocre offensive line? I went with the offensive line. This next question comes from SM. He says, this next question comes from SM. He says, everyone Miami extended contract-wise in 2019 struggled last season. How do you keep that from happening in 2020? Every Miami extended contract. So that would have been Allen Hurns. Albert Wilson got his contract restructured. Who else am I forgetting? Eric Rowe, didn't he get an extension as well? I might be wrong about that. That might be when he initially signed his contract. But Eric Rowe had a really good season. His start to the season was terrible, but as soon as he switched his positions, he was amazing. So, I mean, Allen Hurns had some moments, but he was coming off of a leg injury. I think Allen Hurns has a very good shot at bouncing back and really could be a very good slot receiver. So, how do we keep that from happening? I mean, Bobby McCain, but I don't think he was extended in 2019. I mean, they just have to play better. That's they have a better team around them. Allen Hurns is coming off 2 years removed from that injury, so he should be better. Same thing with Albert Wilson. He should be better as well. I don't know. I think maybe Jakeem Grant was extended last year. I think he is what he is at this point. Malcolm Perry could really take his job as that gadget guy. I'm not even joking around. Because Jakeem Grant hasn't really shown us he is a receiver yet. He's really just a very gimmicky type of a player. So I feel like with a better team around them, some of them are 2 years or more time removed from their injuries. I think all of that can factor into them having better years than they did in 2019. This next question comes from Dolphins. He says, "Hey Skaggs, love your podcast. On paper," I really appreciate that, by the way. It means a lot. He says, "What do you feel are some of the areas and weaknesses on the team?" On paper, the weakness on the defense is clear. It's free safety. That needs to be fixed, or at least we need to see it be fixed. You know what I mean? We need to see that, happen. Even though I still feel, I don't know, I have this gut feeling that Igbenogany is going to be free safety, but even though Brandon Jones and who is a great prospect, and we'll see where he goes. But, yeah, I feel like on defense it's free safety. On offense is the offensive line. Not because of talent, but because of the question mark. Like, a lot of these guys are young. Eric Flowers is coming from Washington. He did it really well for 1 year. Can he replicate that at guard here in Miami? I just need to see how good is Austin Jackson. Even, obviously he had the bone marrow transplant his final year at USC. That really affected his offseason workout. He came into the season not fresh. He was rusty. He wasn't in shape. So now that he's, a year removed from that, him coming into a season. Now, obviously, we have this whole situation with the world right now that, rookies can't, hopefully he's working out and stuff, obviously. But he can't get acclimated to being around NFL play. We'll see how that works out. Hopefully we still have a training camp. But what was the question? I just lost it. What's the biggest weakness? Yeah, so the biggest weakness for me on the offense is still offensive line. Because it's not, I don't think it's a weakness because it's talented. But it is a question mark that we need to have to be, how much improved are they? How did this talent, did we make the right selections in the draft? Can Eric Rowe be consistent at guard, which I think he will be. It's not that he wasn't consistent at Washington. We just need to see him do it again, like 2 years in a row. Like, he did it at Washington at a very good level. We need him to do that in Miami, and I'm sure he will. And then we obviously have the question mark, how good, Austin Jackson, super young guy, how soon does he get the starting job? How good does he look as a rookie? Stuff of that nature. And obviously, Saul McKinley, Robert Hunt, and does Michael Dieter improve? So there's a lot of question marks on the offensive line. So I would say for defense, it's free safety. On the offense, it's just the big question mark, how good and how much more improved is the offensive line for me. This next question comes from SN. He says, with the emergence of Nick Needham and the first-round pick used from 4 cornerback Noah Igbenogany, the Dolphins can put X on the trade block, but what for in turn? No, they cannot put X on the trade block. Sports Illustrated, I believe, did the list of who led the Dolphins in picks for the 2010s. Rashad Jones was 1, Brent Grimes was 2. I think Nolan Carroll was 4. I think X was 3. He had 12 interceptions in a 3-year span when he didn't even start all of the games he played. So think about that. X is, you know what? I really do feel like, because I've seen Omar Kelly throw this trade thing around with him. Same thing with Barry Jackson. Now, the rationale behind it is, or is it Dave Hyde? I get those two mixed up all the time. Their rationale behind it is, how soon, I think things changed after last year and how we ended the year. It's like, how soon is this team going to be competitive? Like, maybe you stock up on draft picks with that. No. X is a special player, okay? Him and Minka were the only guys that I was like, those two, especially on defense, are Pro Bowlers, all-pro type caliber guys, top 5 at their position. Those are great blue chip. You do not find these guys out of, these guys are very difficult to find type of guys, and X is one of them. He had 12 interceptions in a 3-year span. Okay, think about that for a second. He's so talented. He fits the scheme to a T. So no, I don't care if you drafted Noah Igbenogany or not. And, I really don't know what position that he is going to play. I don't care who you picked. You can't just get rid of X, in my opinion. He's a very good player, and to match him up with Byron Jones, we have to have that tandem for at least 3 years to see where this team can go. Because I think it's a very special unit that got bolstered and is reinforced by players like Needham and Noah Igbenogany, where it gives the Dolphins a lot of flexibility there. So there is no circumstance where I would even consider trading X, because I think we're building now. Like, we have what we need to win games. We just need to continue to build off of what we already have. There's no reason to stock up on extra draft picks, because we're already at that position where now let's just add on to it. All right, let's move on to the next question. And SM was just really, does that affect, do I think it should affect, just to touch on that last question really quick, do I think it affects X's position on the team? No. First of all, I feel like Igbenogany is a better prospect at free safety than he is outside corner, in my opinion. I think he's a smaller guy, and if you really want to play him at corner, I think he has to play in the slot to be a hit, to really get the most out of him. So, yeah, I don't think he really can play X's position. Like, he can never be Xavier. He's never going to be as good as X at that position. Like, it's not even... He might not ever be as good as X. Now, I can't know that for sure. But I don't... I mean, it's going to be, like, X is a special talent. That's just no... It's like... that's a building block. You just can't get rid of those. And I don't think the Dolphins should even consider it. This next question comes from Sean Jacobson. He says... When will we replace Bobby McCain from the free safety position? It was uncomfortable watching him last year. So to answer your question, Sean, I would say by week 1 you'll get your answer who's going to be the free safety. I think I don't know. I hope it's either Brandon Jones or Igbenogany. That's what I hope for. I think Brandon Jones has a better chance of doing it. He's a smart dude, very versatile, and I think nobody really brings that up when they talk about Brandon Jones. He did a lot of the stuff we're going to ask him to do in college, where sometimes he would actually line up man-on-man on like a slot receiver or a tight end, and he did that a lot. So he could play a little bit, you can match him up with different guys, and he could play off the ball as well, and really roam your, the center field, the backfield there. So, to be honest with you, I hope it's one of those two. When will it happen? It should happen by week 1, obviously. But hopefully we get, an early look at it in training camp. But, we'll see what happens. That's for sure. I think, one of the bigger reasons Bobby was put there, reportedly, I think it was Omar Kelly who reported this, was because of communication. Like, Bobby was really good at that. So we'll see how B-Flow ends up, what direction he ends up going and who he ends up trusting. Because it's going to be hard to do that with the rookie. This next question comes from JagPack18. He says, I don't understand the hype for Bobby McCain. I never noticed anything special or elite from him. Even when he was playing slot cornerback, can you point to anything I might be missing? I would say he was a very, very good slot corner when he was there. He was a great tackler. He was physical. And when I say he was a great tackler, he doesn't have to, he doesn't have to tackle running back on a consistent basis. He doesn't have to take down, tight ends up the seam and stuff like that. Like, he doesn't have to do crazy stuff that, he really just has to cover the guy in front of him, and usually those guys are the same size as him, because he struggled with players that are bigger and more physical than he is, and he struggled hard against those players. Really, his best playing position is the slot cornerback position, and that's what really got him the contract extension, was playing that position. So can I point to something? He's good. He's a good, like... I feel like he had really good games as a slot cornerback position. He killed the Patriots when he was playing that position in Foxborough. He had a great game. I think he picked Brady off, twice. Maybe it was one time. He had a really good game in that game. I don't know. You just have to watch him play. He's a significantly better slot corner than he is a free safety. But he is good at it. This next question comes from SM. He says, no love from ESPN or FS1, both of which have the Dolphins last in the AFC East. Buffalo looks to be my favorite, followed by New England, the Jets, then Miami. Thoughts? Keeping in mind Ryan Fitzpatrick. Yeah, I talked about this a lot, SM. There's no way the Jets are ahead of the Dolphins. I don't care. You have got to be mentally insane to say the Jets are over the Dolphins. Here are two big red flags. First of all, the roster. This isn't even one of the red flags. I'm just pointing this out. The Dolphins roster is better. And people are like, the Jets added a ton to the offensive line. What do you think the Dolphins did in the offseason? Like, I don't understand that. They act like they got Larry Allen in the draft, when they got Greg Van Roten from the Carolina Panthers, who's an okay offensive line, who's coming from an offensive line that was very inconsistent in the running game. McCaffrey put up all those big numbers, but that, the offensive line, in terms of running the ball, wasn't all that great. So, I just don't... The Jets do not have a better roster than the Dolphins. They just don't. The other two things that I think of, Adam Gase has historically struggled against the New England style of defense. I mean, you think about the Lions game where we were just outcoached in that game. We had a more talented team, but Adam Gase, we got blown out because, I don't know, that system really does struggle against New England. Now, we've had some games in Miami, but we were winning games in Miami with other coaches as well, like Dan Campbell. So I'm not really, I don't really know what to point that particular credit to. But if you look at that offense, it has struggled against New England mightily. I mean, if you look at what he did with the Jets, Brian Flores had a worse roster last year than the Jets did, and he beat them in New England. So I just feel like that scheme is a bad matchup for what we like to do on defense. And I think that's proven with how we played them last year with a less talented team. I mean, we had Ryan Lewis coming off of the Eagles practice squad to start at the outside cornerback position, and we still should have swept the Jets. So, I think all of those things are factors. There's no way the Jets are better than us. I could talk about this for a long time. I don't even want to talk about the Jets, dude. Okay? There's no way that they're better than us. There's just no way. At what position are they? Running back, they don't have the depth that we have. They have Le'Veon Bell. That's it. Offensive line, I feel like that's a wash. Defensive line, definitely not. Secondary, definitely not. Linebackers, definitely not. Receivers, definitely not. Tight end, definitely not. Quarterback, I'm taking Ryan Fitzpatrick over Sam Darnold. I don't know why this love from Sam Darnold is. I don't know where that's coming from. If you look at his production, I know he's got, his completion percentage, all this stuff. He's efficient, all that stuff. And he's very inconsistent, though, because he gets hot and cold. I could ramble on about this a long time. I disagree with it. I don't think the Dolphins are worse than the Jets. Now, when it comes to Buffalo and New England, I think we're better than New England because of the quarterback situation. I don't, we've seen it. When you have a shaky quarterback, it's hard to win games on a consistent basis. Now, if any team could do it, it would be New England. But it's definitely hard to do that. I feel like you can't overlook the most important position on the field. And if you look at their quarterback situation, it's the worst in the division. So I just don't see them overcoming that. Plus, they lost a lot on the defensive side of the football. People point out, they didn't lose all that much on their secondary. They didn't. That's true. But their front is way weaker than it was a year ago. And their offensive line, I feel like, didn't improve that much. So it actually got worse with the loss of Ted Karras. They have less depth there. And tackle is actually, especially tackle depth in New England has been a problem for the last few years as well. So, I don't know. One thing I do know for sure, though, the Dolphins are better than the Jets. That's one thing I do know for sure. So if that doesn't really answer your question, Essen, but you know where I'm coming from on that. This question comes from Richard. He says, "What?" This question comes from Richard. He says, "What about Malcolm Perry as a wide receiver? He can be our Wes Welker. Also use him in the red zone as a wildcat running back and a thrower." Yeah, you could do all that kind of stuff with him. If you want to use him at receiver, it's going to take a long time. He's not going to be better than Allen Hurns and Albert Wilson at playing receiver. He won't see the field if that's what you wanted him to be, or pigeonhole him at that position. Like I said, I feel like you just have to be very creative and use him like Taysom Hill and just find ways to get him the ball. I feel like you're going to get obviously more production that way, and he'll see the field and be effective. And really gives an explosive athlete on the field that the other team's gonna have to worry about, because he can score an 80-yard touchdown. So I feel like it puts stress on the defense as well if you use him the right way. So I think that's how you should use him. This next question comes from Bad Bandit. He says, "Why do people keep saying Tua should start? I keep hearing people who have nothing to do with the Dolphins say he would start day one, like Tampa Bay's head coach Bruce Arians said. Like they want us to throw him out there with no O-line against a brutal schedule. I think they should shut up and worry about their own team. Your thoughts? Okay, wait. What did you say about that? What did you say about the offensive line? He said with no O-line. So first of all, we don't know that yet. Now I'm not saying again, you can't say they don't have one because of all the talent that they added. They added a lot of talent to that offensive line, so we'll have to see where that goes. But like I've said this a million times, you don't want to start Tua until you know where the offensive line is. And the whole thing about first of all, the AFC East is more wide open than it ever has been. So the whole schedule thing to me is crazy. Obviously, the Dolphins have to play the NFC West. And they have to play the AFC West. We really, you never know how good teams are going to be, and I think a lot of the AFC West teams are overrated, and I've said this a million times. Now, people are going to, the Chargers have Tyrod Taylor, Justin Herbert as their quarterbacks. Like, who here is going to be scared? I'm serious. Like, come on, guys. Let's be honest right now. We have B-Flow in this defense. I think we're going to be okay. Now, obviously, you have the Raiders. I think the Broncos and the Chiefs are the best teams in those divisions. In my opinion, I just don't think the Chargers are going to be that great. But, yeah, I don't know. We could break down the schedule here. I don't think I don't know if it's going to be a tough schedule yet. I think there's a lot of teams that could fall off. We see it every single year. Good teams turn to bad teams. It happens. Injuries, all that stuff. You never know who's going to be good. But what is the question about the offensive line? We have to wait and see about, in my opinion, Bad Bandit. And the whole Tua should start thing, I think, comes down to where is the offensive line. I think you're right about you can't throw him behind. If the offensive line struggled like it did a year ago, if it does, then we need to look at coaches because you added too much talent to it for it to be that bad. But if it is struggling at that level, then you just can't throw Tua in. You just can't throw Tua in that situation. It's not good for any young quarterback. This next question comes from Steve. He says, what's your opinion on players kneeling during the anthem? I, for one, don't agree with it, but that's just my opinion. I don't really want to talk about all that stuff. I mean, you hear it every day. We don't need to hear it on this show. But this next question comes from, I don't want to dodge the question, but you know what I'm saying. It's just there's no reason. This next question comes from Bad Bandit. He says, hey Skaggs. And when I say no reason, I mean I'm talking about just to talk about it. I feel like people are hearing about it enough. This next question comes from Bad Bandit. He says, hey Skaggs, what do you think Preston Williams' stats will look like this coming season? Do you think he will have a down year considering he is coming back from an ACL injury? No. It's hard to tell. It's depending on the player. He is so talented, though. First of all, he's a great technician. He's not just a physical, he's going to outmuscle you, use his size. Like, he's a very good route runner, and he gets in and out of his breaks very smoothly for someone his size. So, no. I think because of that, and because so much of his game relies on that, not necessarily athleticism, I would say no. I think he could be better. Plus, he's younger. He hasn't been in the league that long, excuse me. So I think that has an effect on how your ability to bounce back quicker. We've seen it with Deshaun Watson and certain other players that they're able to come back quicker. I think age has a lot to do with it, how long you've been playing the sport, stuff like that. So, yes, I think he won't have, hopefully, the injury wall that he has to run through, where it kind of nags him the entire year and it just doesn't feel the same. But a lot of players just can't hit that gear they could hit when they were 100% healthy. I just don't think that's a huge part of his game. Is that explosiveness? He just has an innate feel, like Dwayne Harris, or what was his name? Is it Dwayne Harris or is it the returner from the Cowboys? Like when you watch him play, he's not necessarily a great all around, but he's a great special teams player. He has an innate feel for the game of football. Even if you throw him a screen at receiver, he just has an ability to weave his way out of traffic and stuff like that. Some guys just have that feel for the game that you could just tell that they have. I think Preston Williams is one of those players. He reminds me of, and I've said this a million times, but he reminds me of AJ Green and Michael Thomas. That's who he really reminds me of. He really reminds me of those two players. I don't think he's as explosive as AJ Green, but I feel like he's more athletic than Michael Thomas. Where he'll fall in the middle of that, I don't know. But his game reminds me of those two. So I don't think, to answer your question, Bad Bandit. I don't. Hopefully, I just think for those reasons, hopefully he doesn't hit that wall. And I guess it's not like a terrible thing to answer from Steve about the anthem thing. I just feel like people hear about it enough. There's no reason to take 10 minutes of time to talk about it. People are hearing about it quite a lot. What was I gonna say? Man, I feel like we talked about the anthem thing on past episodes before. I can't remember what I was about to say. I can't remember. Well, that was the last of the questions. So I can't remember. I lost my train of thought. I was going to bring something up. Anyway, that is it, ladies and gentlemen. That is it for the show. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I enjoyed making it. I always enjoy making it. I have a ton of fun making these episodes. I hope you guys enjoyed it. That's why we do it. Hopefully for your enjoyment. And that is going to be it, guys. Hopefully everybody is staying safe and positive and, just in general happy. I feel like, a lot of unhappiness going around. I hope everybody's doing okay. But I am Sky Exchange 83, and I will see you guys in the next one.